So I'm going to go back about 6 inches here and very carefully put a real light score on the jacket without nicking the jacket that's actually bonded to the wire. And then that'll just kind of peel through as I pull the wire off this first cut here. Kind of going off track. Let me see if I can back down the top here. And peel, there we go. Yeah, beautiful. So I didn't go through any of it thus far. I'm going to get it peeled back to the right there at that point. And these will just pull out. I have to do the same to the ground here. The thickness is the same. It's real soft, pliable rubber, so you just need to put a real light score on there. And I mean very light. Get that cut started. Oops. There we go. Go back to here. Of course, now very carefully we're going to go ahead and hold those back firmly and cut this with the scissors with just a little bit of a lead there so we don't nick the jacket. Okay, we're in good shape. Okay, so I went ahead and cut these the appropriate length and staggered them, and I left about a 5/8 lead on them, so I have about an 1/8 inch of space where I can do a little soldering, and if I get the heat to get it too hot, I'm not going to really burn up the insulation on the wire. And these I've matched up and cut as well the proper lengths, and so I'm going to go ahead and put crimps on these first, crimp these ends, and as of course you can see I went ahead and measured them, and they're just about a hair over 1/8, and that gives me sufficient space to go ahead and solder after I do the crimp. So I'm going to go ahead and crimp these four first, and then we'll go ahead and crimp the other ends on there. Get that centered up properly. Insert this until it stops, and give it a pinch until I can feel it snug, and then I can release it and use both hands and give it a good push down on there. And of course you can see a good notch in there, and it's good and tight. Do the same thing this way. Get that inserted in there properly. Give it a pinch so I can feel some tension. Give it a good squeeze. Notched well. Same thing over here. And the last one. And when you're using heavy lugs like this, you want to make sure you get a good pair of crimping pliers. Something like this, the run-of-the-mill cheap automotive wire cutter and stripper and crimper is really not going to be sufficient for something like this. So you want to set a good crimping pliers. Of course, they're notched in, they're good and tight. And this is simply a mechanical joint here, which, if done properly, is going to withstand any amount of pulling by human effort anyways, and the idea here is to make it as strong as the original wire. So we'll go ahead and get these matched up. Now, before you make this second connection, you need to absolutely make sure that you've put in your heat shrink tubing, because you're going to end up having to cut it and put it back in, and that's the only way that it's going to work is to slip these on holes. So make sure, absolutely sure, before you make any solid connections on both ends of these lugs, that you have this heat shrink tubing in place. Okay, so the yellow is going to be matched up with the brown because that's the capacitor leg, and of course it's roughly the same tolerance there, a little bit over 1/8, so we can get some solder up in there. So I'm going to go ahead and, get that out of the way here. I'm going to go ahead and get this set in the pliers first in exactly the position I want to. Get a good grip on it. Put this in here this way. And I feel tension on that. Go ahead and give it a good squeeze, bear down on it. And that's good and secure. Next one's going to be black on blue, then red on black, and then finally the yellow green on green. So we're going to get this positioned on the crimp pliers first so I can get a good grip on it and put some tension on it. Okay, now I've got that where I want it. Insert this like so, squeeze down on it to get some, make sure it's secure, and then put both hands on it and give it a good crimp. Yeah, that's good and tight. Alright. Next one in position is going to be the other power leg. This is the capacitor leg. These are the two power legs. This is the ground. So, once again, I'm going to get it under control with the crimping tool. Have that good and snug. Reach over and insert this wire. It's easier to control this way. Get it inserted. Squeeze down on it. I've got tension. Give it a good squeeze. That one's good and tight. And the final one. Get control of it with the crimping pliers. This is the ground. This one I have to pay particular attention to because this is not 12 gauge wire. It's not even 14, it looks like 16 gauge wire, so I'm going to make sure that I bear down on it real good. Maybe insert it a little bit past that stop if I can. A little twist. Yeah, I've just about collapsed that fitting on it. Give it a real good squeeze. And that's good and secured. So those are all good and tight. Next what I'm going to do is maybe set up a block here and isolate these so that I can get them separated and do the solder operation one at a time. You can see they've been properly staggered and the lugs have been crimped on there properly. We're going to go ahead and solder them next, and after we solder them, I'm going to go ahead and wrap several inches of Templex 2155 rubber splicing tape to give it some added protection and some stiffness and insulative properties, a little bit more protection before we go ahead and slip the shrink wrap tubing over there and get that secured on there with some heat. I took close-up pictures of the solder operation there to give you an idea that the ends are properly soldered, and a little hole here in the insulation because it was burnt, but that's again the reason why I've got why I have the rubber splicing tape to provide some additional insulation and protection before we put the heat shrink on. So I'll get this on there good and tight. And that is now good and secure. The next thing we're going to do is go ahead and slide this tube over and get the heat shrink on there. You want to start in the middle, get a little bit of heat. Be careful not to put too much heat on it in one spot so you don't burn it, as well as burning the jacket. Let that stand for a minute. And of course you can see the heat glue oozing out the ends as it melts and conforms any voids on the inside of the heat shrink and makes it a solid connection. Trying to get the heat just on the lug without burning the insulation. Easier said than done. This is kind of a wide flame. And that tin discolored, so it must be reaching heat. Getting close to it. Okay. I'll let that cool off and give you some close-up pictures of that. I went ahead and filled both ends up and the notches in the crimp. So it's a good solid solder all the way across. The reason for starting in the center is you want to melt the glue, and as the glue starts melting in the center, it'll start pushing its way out towards the outside of the heat shrink and sealing as it goes. You can see it oozing out there and filling in all the voids. And in an overabundance of caution, I went ahead and put some Super 88 3M electrical tape on it, just to give it a little bit of added protection and a better finished look. There we are. So I'm going to put a little bit of tape here to stiffen this double jacket. This will conclude the pump control box overview and the wire splicing. The next video we're going to do is going to demonstrate us taping this against the pipe and continuing with the pipe and wire installation.